There is a question I hear more than any other, and it comes in different words, but it always has the same question. Why can't I stop thinking about them? Why does my brain feel like it's hijacked? I know this is not healthy. I know this person is not good for me. I know that I should move on, but I cannot, and I don't understand why. Because the reason you cannot stop thinking about them is not that you're weak or unlovable or incapable of moving on. The reason you cannot stop thinking about them is that your brain has been conditioned by the same mechanisms that drive substance addiction, the same pathways, the same neurotransmitters, the same behavioral cycle. In the last video, I introduced limerence, the psychological state that Dorothy Tenev identified in the 1970s, the state of obsessive fixation on one person. And I told you that limerence is not love, it is a subconscious loop. I'm going to show you exactly what is happening inside of that loop. I'm going to show you the three neurochemical systems that are driving your obsession: dopamine, noradrenaline, oxytocin. And each one plays a specific role. Each one hooks you in a specific way, and together they create a trap that is so effective, so biologically powerful, that calling it a crush is like calling a hurricane a light breeze. So by the end of this video, you will understand why you literally cannot stop, why the cravings feel so physical, and why the withdrawal is real. So let me start with the core idea that changes everything. This is the framework I want you to hold in your mind for this entire video. Your limerent object, or that person that you can't stop obsessing over, is not just someone that you have feelings for. That person is literally a drug. That is not a metaphor. This is neurochemical. Think about it. In 2024, a scoping review published in the Journal of Police and Criminal Psychology examined the behavioral state of limerence. The researchers, Bradbury, Short, and Bleakley, found the intense romantic fixation triggers the same mesolimbic reward pathways as substance addiction and gambling addiction. The same pathways. Same behavioral cycles of craving, reward, withdrawal, and cravings again. But here's what most people get wrong. They think addiction is something that only happens with external substances: cocaine, heroin, alcohol, gambling. They think that I'm not an addict, I'm just in love. But the brain does not distinguish between a chemical that you ingest and a chemical your own brain produces in response to a person. The pathways are the same. The neurochemistry is the same. The behavioral pattern is the same. You take a hit, you get a reward. You get a crash, you crave another hit. You take a hit by checking their social media, you get a reward when you see them posting something, or better yet, when they liked your post, responded to your message, gives you some kind of scrap of attention, and then you crash when that attention fades. That is the addiction loop. This loop does not run at a conscious level. Your prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain that does the rational planning, that knows this person is not good for you, that made the list of reasons why you should move on from this person, that part of your brain is not in control here. Otherwise, you would have fucking moved on by now. You did not think yourself into this problem, but you can understand it, and understanding is the first step to breaking it. So let me break down the three neurochemical systems one by one. Each one is a different way your brain has been hijacked, and each one requires a different strategy to unhook. So let's start with the one you probably heard of, dopamine. Most people think that dopamine is a pleasure chemical. That is wrong. Dopamine is an anticipation chemical. It is the molecule of wanting, not liking. If you have ever found yourself checking your phone, refreshing your messages, opening their social media, looking for a sign, and felt that jolt of something when you saw their name, that was dopamine. That was not pleasure. That was anticipation. Dopamine is released in anticipation of reward, not during the reward itself. But here's why this distinction matters. When you are in limerence, your brain learns something. It learns that this person is a source of unpredictable, high-value rewards. A text message, a like, a look, a moment in warmth that could mean something or mean nothing at all. And your dopamine system responds to that unpredictably in the same way a gambler's brain responds to a slot machine. Think about a slot machine. You pull the lever, you do not know what's going to happen. Sometimes you win, most of the time you lose, but that unpredictability, the possibility of the next pull might be the big one. That is what keeps you pulling. That is called intermittent reward schedule, and it is the most addictive reinforcement pattern in existence. Continuous reward, where you get something every time, actually produces less dopamine over time. Your brain habituates and it gets bored. But intermittent reward, when you get something sometimes unpredictably, that is what creates compulsive behavior. That is what keeps a gambler at a slot machine for hours, and that is what keeps you refreshing messages at 2 o'clock in the morning. Or you could even think about the dog who found the cheeseburger under the park bench that one day, like 3 years ago, and they still check Yeah, that's intermittent reinforcement because your brain has learned that the next one might be the one. The next text might be the one that changes everything. The next interaction might be the one where they finally see you. And every time you get a reward, every time they respond, every time you get that one hit of attention, your dopamine spikes. You feel euphoric. You feel like everything is going to be okay, and you feel like you are right to hold on. But that dopamine drops. That drop does not go back to baseline. Your drop goes below baseline. This is called dopamine deficient state. After a spike, your dopamine levels don't just return to normal, they dip. You feel worse than you did before you even got the reward. You feel anxious, empty, desperate. That craving returns even stronger than before. And what do you do when you feel that way? Well, you go back to the source. You check their social media. You replay the conversation in your head. You look for the evidence that they still care, and you try to engineer another hit of attention. And the cycle continues. This is why just move on is the most useless advice anyone could possibly fucking give you. You cannot just move on from a dopamine addiction by deciding to. The circuitry that drives the compulsion is not accessible to conscious decision making. Now, here's something most people do not know about dopamine, and it changes everything about how you should approach even breaking the cycle. Dopamine does not just spike in response to reward, it spikes in response to novelty, to uncertainty, to the unknown. In evolutionary terms, this makes perfect sense. When you encounter something new in your environment, your brain needs to figure out whether it is a threat or an opportunity. Dopamine focuses your attention. It says, pay attention to this. This matters. But in the context of limerence, this mechanism works against you. The uncertainty, the not knowing whether they feel the same way, the knowing that what the text really meant, the knowing where you stand, that uncertainty is not a bug. It is a feature. It is what keeps your dopamine system engaged. Certainty kills limerence. And if you knew with absolute certainty that this person was never going to reciprocate your feelings, the dopamine would eventually fade. But you do not know. You have hope, and hope, that tiny, persistent, they might feeling, is what is keeping the dopamine system running. And 10 have called this hope plus uncertainty. It is the engine of limerence, and it runs on dopamine. The second neurochemical system driving limerence is noradrenaline. Noradrenaline is the arousal chemical. It's not a sexual arousal, although it can be part of it. I mean nervous system arousal, alertness, focus, the feeling of being wired on edge, unable to relax. If dopamine is the wanting, noradrenaline is the alerting. Think about what happens when you're around that person, or even when you are just thinking about them. Your heart rate increases, your palm might sweat, your mind becomes laser focused, you become hyper aware of everything that they do and they say. You notice those micro expressions, the tone shifts, the exact wording of the text message. Your brain is recording everything. This is noradrenaline, and it is doing exactly what it evolved to do. Noradrenaline evolved to keep you alive in threatening situations, and so when a predator appeared on the savannah, your noradrenaline spiked and your attention narrowed and your body prepared for action, and everything else faded into the background. In limerence, your brain has recategorized this person as something worthy of attention, as something that matters, deeply urgent, vitality, literally to your survival. But here's the trap. Noradrenaline is not just triggered by the person, it is triggered by the situation specifically of uncertainty, never quite sure where you stand, always waiting for the next signal. That uncertainty creates a low-grade but persistent state of arousal. Your nervous system is always slightly activated, you're always slightly on edge, and what does your brain do with that unexplained arousal? It looks for a cause, it looks for a story, and the story it tells you is this person must matter, this person must be important, look at how strongly I feel around them. This is a classic psychological phenomenon called attribution of arousal. Your body feels activated and your brain assigns that activation to whatever is most salient to your environment, in this case, that person that you are fixated on. And it is the reason people fall in love on roller coasters or during scary movies or high-stress situations. The arousal is real, the attribution is constructed. But there is another dimension to noradrenaline that makes limerence even harder to break. Noradrenaline impairs your prefrontal cortex. The same chemical that makes you hyper-focused on them actually reduces your ability to think clearly and evaluate evidence, to make rational judgment on whether this person is good for you. Your prefrontal cortex is the part of your brain that does the cost-benefit analysis. The part that can look at a situation and say, this person is not reciprocating, this is not healthy, I should walk away. But when your neuroadrenaline is elevated, that part of your brain is literally partially offline. You are feeling, not evaluating. This is why you can have that list of 20 reasons this person is bad for you and still feel pull towards them. Your prefrontal cortex made the list, but your prefrontal cortex is not in the driver's seat. This is also why the feelings intensify through adversity. I've noted that this is one of the defining features of limerence, is that the obstacles do not discourage the limerent or you being in limerence. If the person is unavailable, you want them more. If they are with someone else, the obsession deepens. Why? Because adversity increases noradrenaline, and more noradrenaline means more arousal, more focus, more that feeling that this person must be important. Your brain interprets the intensity of your psychological state as evidence of the depth of your feelings. The more activated you are, the more it must matter, the more it must mean something. It does not mean something. It means your noradrenaline is spiking. The third neurochemical system that locks you into limerence is oxytocin. Oxytocin is called the love hormone or the bonding chemical. It is released during physical touch, during eye contact, during orgasm, childbirth, breastfeeding. It creates feelings of trust, of attachment, and of bonding. But here's the thing that most people don't understand about oxytocin. Oxytocin does not care whether the bonding is healthy. Oxytocin is not a moral molecule. It does not evaluate the person that you are bonding to. It does not check whether they are good for you or whether they reciprocate or whether they treat you with respect. Oxytocin simply says bond to this person. And once that bond is formed, your brain treats that person as part of your survival system. Losing them feels like a threat to your existence. Now think about this. When you are in limerence, when you have spent hours thinking about this person, replaying interactions, imagining futures together, feeling that rush of dopamine when they have given you attention, your brain is flooding with oxytocin. You are bonding, you are attaching, you are forming a connection that your brain treats as essential to your well-being. And then when they pull away, when that attention stops, when that hope fades, you don't just feel sad. You literally feel like you are dying. This is not an exaggeration. The same brain regions that activate during physical pain also activate during social rejection and romantic loss. The same neural real estate that processes a broken arm processes a broken heart. Your brain literally experiences the loss of that person as a threat to your survival, and oxytocin is the reason. Now here's what makes this particularly dangerous in the context of limerence. In a healthy relationship, oxytocin is released in the context of mutual bonding. Both people are attaching, both people are invested, the bond is reciprocal. In limerence, the bond is one-sided. You are attaching to someone who may not be attaching to you. You are bonding to the fantasy of them, to the version of them that you have constructed in your mind, to the person you imagine they could be if only they would choose you, if only the obstacles were removed, if only the timing were right. And that fantasy bond is just as neurochemically real as the mutual bonding. Your brain does not distinguish between we are bonding and I am bonding to the idea of them. The oxytocin is the same, the attachment is the same, the withdrawal is the same. This is why leaving a limerent attachment feels like leaving a long-term relationship, even when there was never a relationship to begin with. Your brain formed the bond. Your brain is now breaking the bond, and breaking the bond, even a one-sided bond, it fucking hurts. There's something else about oxytocin that is crucial to understand too. Oxytocin and dopamine interact. When you get attention from somebody you have bonded to, the dopamine spike is even bigger. The reward is amplified, and when you pull away, the dopamine crashes deeper and the oxytocin withdrawal makes the pain even more acute. This is why limerence is not just one addiction. It is 3 addictions running at the same time. Dopamine addiction to the intermittent reward of the attention, noradrenaline addiction to the arousal of uncertainty, oxytocin to a bond that may not even exist outside of your own mind. Now, if this sounds hopeless, I want you to hear this next part very carefully. The same neuroplasticity that built the addiction can break it. The same brain that learned to associate this person with reward, with arousal, with bonding, that same brain can learn to disassociate them. The brain is not a fixed structure. It is a dynamic, adaptive, constantly rewiring system. Every thought you think, every behavior you repeat, every experience you have changes the physical structure of the brain. Neurons that fire together wire together, and the neurons that stop firing together unwire. This is called neuroplasticity, and it is the single most important concept in neuroscience to anyone trying to break free from limerence. But here's what this means in practice. Every time you check their social media and you get a dopamine hit, you are strengthening that neural pathway. You're teaching your brain this person equals reward. Keep doing this. Every time you feel that arousal of uncertainty and you lean into it, replaying the conversations, analyzing the text, looking for the hidden meaning, you're strengthening that neural pathway. Every time you indulge the fantasy of the bond, imagining the future together, holding the hope, treating the connection as sacred, you're strengthening that neural pathway. You're teaching your brain, this person is essential to survival. Do not let it go. But here's what also happens. Every time you resist the urge to check their social media, you weaken the pathway. Every time you notice the arousal of uncertainty, uncertainty and choose not to engage with it, you weaken the pathway. Every time you catch yourself fantasizing about the bond and redirecting your attention, you weaken the pathway. This is not a metaphor. This is not positive thinking. This is neurobiology. When a neural pathway stops being activated, it begins to degrade. The synapses weaken, the connections thin, the compulsion loses its power. Obviously, it takes time. Just as it took time for the addiction to form, it takes time for the brain to rewire from it. You cannot expect to undo months or years of conditioning in a week, but you can expect something else. You can expect that every day you choose not to feed the loop only gets weaker. And this is where hypnosis enters the picture. This is where the work that I do becomes relevant. Because the conscious strategies, the lists, the journaling, the just move on, those operate at a level of the prefrontal cortex. They're trying to use reason to override a system that was not built by reason. Hypnosis operates at a level where the loop actually lives, the subconscious. And this is what I'm going to cover in future videos, the specific techniques, the subconscious approaches, the ways to access and update the template itself. But for now, I just want you to walk away with this video with one thing. You now understand why you cannot stop. It is not a mystery anymore. It's dopamine, it's noradrenaline, it's oxytocin. All this means is that you are a human with a brain that got caught in a loop that millions of brains have been caught in before you. And this loop is called limerence. Limerence can be broken because what neuroscience creates, neuroscience can also undo. Anyway, that's all that I have for this video. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, leave them down in the comments and I will get back to you in the next video.